If this was a Sunday afternoon in Kansas and a whole group of people got together and they suddenly got talking about car racing, they'd probably think about, the Charlotte area, Indianapolis perhaps, Southern California as the great breeding grounds for racers. Well, what do they know? Think about it. Here we are for New England Lap 5, and thanks to the incredible efforts of Al Feeney, Dan Party, Pete Zanardi, R.A. Sylvia, and everybody, we've got just another stellar field of inductees. Mine is Bill Wimble, the legendary 50s and 60s era Charger, who, like Bugsy, Ernie Gahan, Reaney, Richie Evans, Pete Hamilton, all became NASCAR national champions. And you know, when all of us strokers today think back on what that means, it gets even more amazing. It is said that in a 2-year period, Reaney ran 400 shows, from Louisiana to Maine, towing old roads with an old pickup truck. How did those guys do it? It's quite possible that Bill Wimble, our bespectacled former dairy farmer from upstate New York, has some clues, and these might be some of them. First of all, raw talent in spades. Doug Wolfgang once told Dick Berggren and me that anybody who's going to be any good goes out of a ballpark early on in his career with the foot still deep in the injector, upside down. Wimble did that. They say he was out of his socks wild. The first time that he ventured down from Lisbon, New York, those 200 miles of bad road down to Fonda, he encountered the grand old man, Steve Danish. Danish, frankly, was thunderously unimpressed with this young Wimble style, and with his finger firmly affixed on Wimble's nose, he said, "You just drove a whole race spun out." Over the seasons, the very few seasons following, that wildness would immediately rinse away, but the talent and the speed did not. In fact, Wimble began to develop a cognitive, though still gutsy, approach to racing. We will all remember him touring around Stafford's Clay, in the lead, in that perfect power slide, with his pony wheel placed 6 inches away from the infield. It was absolutely smooth as silk. But the issue is, how did he get out front? In Bill's words, "I had to run on the edge." You know, there's all this talk about how you can't win a race in the first lap. "Bull," he said, "I can't tell you how many races I won on the first lap. I just had to get out of the pack quicker than anybody else. The competition was that brutal." Well, maybe it was brutal, but it sure didn't keep Wimble from winning hundreds of races. It's clear also that Wimble was willing to commit all the energy and personal sacrifice necessary to be a winner. It meant talking people into rides, it meant learning the system, and it meant for years sleeping in a bed, often almost twice a week, while gallivanting around to distant fairgrounds here and there. And he did go to distant fairgrounds, from the little bull rings up around Montreal to the freshly laid banks of Daytona International. You just wonder how it was possible. There weren't any Winston Cup or Outlaw haulers back then, replete with hot tubs, VCRs, and dancing girls. No, Wimble's answer was much more simple. What he got was a new Ford Coupe road car every year, always red and black, and one of them had a 312 in it with dual quads, and the 312 was built by Holman and Moody. The car was so fast that Wimble actually out-timed the Ford factory team on those timed races on the sands on the Daytona beach. And if the truth be known, I don't suspect it was only in Florida that the car went that fast. The enterprising Wimble actually arranged for an immune stretch on the New York highway, the New York Thruway. Essentially, at the height of his fame, he could travel at any speed he wanted on that critical highway bandwidth that had Moreau County out to the west and Stafford to the east. In the mid-60s, though, through with chasing points and national championships, Wimble began several seasons of running just the high-paying events with Dave McCready's team. They were awesome, almost melodic in their efficiency, precision, and business-like approach. They won everywhere. The music would stop, however, on Saturday night, August 24th, 1968, in a grinding crash at Lebanon Valley. Serious head injuries would end his career right on the spot. Also stopped right on the spot was his watch from the violence of the accident. And that watch now sits in the Dirt Museum, forever pointed to 9:50 p.m. and 32 seconds. Wimble's energy and sense of system, however, remained very much intact, and our soft-spoken former hayseed farmer has become quite the businessman extraordinaire. First, building trucking businesses, selling them, then entering factoring, and now dabbling in internet startups with his thoroughly lovely wife, Nancy, from their home office near Tampa. Though New Yorkers, Bill and Nancy are with us today because, like New Yorker Richie Evans, Bill was a multiple New England track champion. He won the modified point chase at Stafford in '64 and '65, scooping an impressive 19 features along the way. He also ran Norwood, the Park, Fairhaven, Thompson, Oxford, and State Line. On a very personal note, over the last couple of years, for various reasons, I've gotten to know Bill Wimble really well. And let me tell you this, nothing that guy could win would surprise me. Here is one exceedingly competent and nice human being. And so, it becomes my privilege and our profound honor to present for induction to the Near Hall of Fame in perpetuity, the legendary Bill Wimble.
Hi, folks. Lou, thank you very, very much for that impressive talk about my career. I'm overwhelmed by it. Don't know what to say. I did ask Lou before, we're sitting at the same table, and I did ask Lou if he was nervous, and he said, not exactly. Well, I've got the exactly. Al Feeney, in his meticulous preparation for this event, sent me a video of the 2000 induction, which I watched with a good deal of attention. And one thing impressed me. That was that some real tough New England Yankees got up there and got emotional. I want to tell you that I'm the worst of the worst. So if I stop any time here, it's because I can't go on, and I'll just get back to you when I can. It's the way I am. Emotion overwhelms me at times, and I never know when it's going to happen. When it does, I'm done until I can gather myself up. And I cry at everything. I cry at in sad movies, and I cry when they play the national anthem. I cry when I see excellence, and it could be a great tennis match, it could be a great move on the racetrack, it could be excellence in journalism. There are people in journalism here today, Dr. Dick Bergen as an example, who can make me cry anytime. I've had to put up with this guy. Thank you very much, Rini. You'd think I could have been rid of him, wouldn't you? Somehow. But excellence in journalism is something that I enjoy. Dr. Dick Berggren can make me cry anytime with some of the articles he writes. Dave Argerbright, it's a given. He writes, every article he writes, I cry. And Ken Squire, the great Ken Squire, he can make me do it with words. We go back a while, he and I. Maybe 45 years or something like that. He corrected me once on this, said I was a little short. Anyway, It's been a great career, and I have had a heck of a good time. I love these events. I am so happy to be here. I mean it. I'm sincere. I love to be here. I love these events. I love to get the chance to talk to people that I raced with and people that I knew. Don't see them much anymore. You know, I'm awful lucky in a way. I've been inducted to, this is my 8th Hall of Fame. And I can tell you, I can promise you that this one means as much to me, every bit as much as the first one did or the middle one did. You name it, they mean a lot. It means, it's 33 years since I sat down in a race car. And to be remembered after 33 years is a pretty moving thing to me. And probably more special is the fact that I did not spend a whole lot of my career in New England. So I'm not sure that I belong in this Hall of Fame, but I am sure glad to be here. I appreciate it ever so much. What I did do over my career was to race with an awful lot of wonderful drivers from New England. And not so much in New England, but other places. And most of them are today, deservedly, in your Hall of Fame. I'm sure glad that I had the opportunity to do that. Most of my racing in New England, although Lou mentioned many places, most of my racing was done at Stafford Speedway. And when it was dirt. And I loved that racetrack. It could have been built just for me. It was perfect. I've got a couple of little notes here that are supposed to make my mind work. Look down and see those notes and make my mind work. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I love Stafford, and to tell you the truth, I never met a racetrack that I didn't like. I liked all racetracks, but probably liked dirt better than anything else. I was never so happy as when I was in a great big broad slide, hanging it out. I was living. That's what I love to do. I have a curse that I wish I didn't have, but I guess everybody has one that's in the business of one kind or another. And my curse is that I know I won a lot of races. The statistics say that, but I don't remember many of them. Unfortunately, I'd like to remember all those victories, but I don't. But the one thing that I do remember is every race that I should have won and didn't. To this day, 40 years later, I relive those doggone things. I wake up at night and I say, I should have done so-and-so. And I just agonize over it. That's the curse I have. Luckily, I do remember a few wins, and I'm only going to tell you about one of them. It was at Stafford Springs, and it was the first time that I ever saw Stafford Speedway. In 1960, I was the NASCAR National Sportsman Champion, and I said, I've done that, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I've done that often enough. However, in 61, I had an absolutely marvelous year, better than the 60 year. And with a month to go, I had a mathematical chance of catching the leader. So I decided to give it my best shot. One of those weekends at the end of the season, during that last month, my race car had a different driver in it at Langhorne, Pennsylvania, because my owner loved Langhorne and I couldn't go there. It was not NASCAR and I could not go there without losing my points. So, luckily, a gentleman in Rochester, or near Rochester, New York, named Pete Hollebrand, who was pretty famous as an owner in the years of Cookie, Gerald Cook, gave me a weekend with his car. We went to Flemington on Saturday night and I wrecked it, of course. And we bent the front axle up so that we had a lot of camber in the front wheel, and we had no place to straighten it. So we lined it up and we fixed the toe and we went to Stafford Springs the next afternoon. My introduction to Stafford. Obviously, I started in the rear. The camber didn't hurt anything, and at that time George Janowski was the hot shoe. And I started behind George, but not much, because of his feature win record. He was near the tail. And I don't think George saw me pass him. I passed him early, and I was gone. And George was so sure that he won the race that he showed up to pick up the checkered flag just as I was taking it away. That's one I remember. And George Janowski is a friend of mine, and I think he is one of the sweetest guys that I have truly ever met. Heck of a race driver. I was lucky that day. In 1964 and 65, I did make it part of my itinerary to be there every Friday night. And I was lucky enough to win the track championship in those 2 years. But I experienced something there that I never experienced before in my life. I got booed. No place else had I ever been booed, no matter how much I won. And there was just one difference: no fan contact. If you all remember, the pits were on the opposite side of the racetrack from the grandstand. And I arrived late, just in time for fast warm-ups. I used to leave my farm at noon, come out of the hayfield, take a bath, drive 330 miles to Stafford. Half of that was two-lane road. I'd get there just in time for fast warm-ups, and when the feature was over, I drove it straight onto the trailer, and I was gone. So I never saw a fan. I got booed plenty. And that should be a lesson to all of us, I guess. Pay attention to the fans. They're what makes it for us. That's why we're there. I learned the lesson. I always spent a lot of time with the fans everywhere else, but Stafford happened to be a special situation for me, and there just wasn't time to do it. But I'm sorry, in a way, that I didn't do it anyway. So I learned a lesson, and I hope maybe somebody else around here today will learn that same lesson. Pay attention to the fans. They deserve it. I guess enough stories. It's time for a couple thank yous, and let me get sat down. I'm a relationship person, and I love, as I mentioned before, I love these things because the relationships have a chance to renew themselves. Some of my relationships go back a long ways, and over here at the table sitting there that I'm also seated at, Dick and Dorothy Waterman. A lot of you will remember Dick Waterman, who ran the Utica Rome Speedway for 15 years. Nancy and I have been friends of theirs for a long, long, long time, going probably somewhere between 35 and 40 years. Dick, I suspect lots of you drivers here today had things to do with Dick back in those days. And sitting next to Dick, a fellow by the name of Bob Noble. He and I go back 40-some years. And he's a retired, successful oil man who was retired to his native Vermont, built himself a nice home out there in the woods, and we keep in touch. And he brought with him his boyhood friend, Bucky Isham, who's a retired school principal from Vermont. Sitting over there is John Tellini, who waved flags over many, many, many of you older drivers in here, Utica, Rome, Albany, Saratoga. And I want to thank you, my friends, for being here for me. And this is a tough one. Oh, there's my Nancy over there, too. Yeah, see, it's coming. I'm going to have trouble here. I'm going to have a little trouble here, but Nancy and I have had a wonderful life. I call her Nancy with a smiling face, the girl of my dreams. Damn it. I knew I was going to have this problem, but anyway. She has given me 35 wonderful years of marriage, and I thank you, babe. Wish my crew could be here to thank them. I talked to Freddie DeCarr, who was instrumental in my career in all of the wins, or not all of them, but most of them. Freddie couldn't make it. We chatted for half an hour the other night. Dougie Rundle, who I'd like to have here too, couldn't make it. But their hearts are here, and they told me so. And I want to thank them for it. Without Freddie and Dougie, I wouldn't be as good as Lou says I am. I just wouldn't. And lastly, I sure want to thank Near, Al Feeney, and his crew, his complete crew, who put this type of thing together. You know what a job this is? Believe me, this is the biggest job in the world. To make something like this come together and have it all nice and easy is wonderful. Thank you guys, and I want to thank everybody that had anything to do with getting me into this Hall of Fame. I love it. Thank you.